Let's go somewhere, y'all. I am having terrible cabin fever. And I almost decided not to go. It's rainy here, which is awesome. We need it. And we have had several pockets of rain, and they've been slow and easy, which is just what we need. The ground is so dry and so hard and packed that a hard rain would cause a lot of flooding. And people in flood areas definitely do not need that. So, we're on our way. Now, I don't know, y'all, if we're going to go all the way to Yuma. My goal with this trip really is to find a campground or two for us to stay at. And I say us, and I mean myself and Hazel and you all, because you're going to. So we'll see what happens. Now, there's a couple of apps that you can download on your phone or your tablet. One of them is called freecampsites.net. And they help you to find camping areas that don't charge, or that charge a very little bit, which is my goal. I also wanted to see about trying to stay one night in an RV park. I've never done that before. Now, I contacted a couple of RV parks, and they told me no, they don't allow vans. Pretty darn snooty, wouldn't you say? It kind of aggravated me, but you know what? It is what it is. A park that is definitely, there's a difference between an RV park and an RV resort, okay? One of the main differences is that the resorts, of course, are more spending. So we're not going to be allowed into a resort, y'all. But I am hoping to find an RV park. So those are the two things that I really want to do on this little trip. I want to do something different. Now, I may end up in Yuma, but I may not. We'll see. Now, I'm going to give you an update on the apartment situation with Terry. We went in yesterday and we had his appointment. Now, it is possible for me to move in there as a live-in aid, is what they call it. You're not on the lease. You are an occupant, but you're not liable for any rent or anything like that. If he loses the apartment for some reason, say he didn't pay the rent, which, by the way, is the most common reason that people lose their apartments. Having an eviction is devastating. You almost can never get another apartment. It's just the way it is. Nobody wants to rent to somebody who doesn't pay their rent. Okay, so the young man who was taking us through this interview really did not know what he was doing, y'all. I know he was in training. So he really didn't know everything. Now, this property is a tax credit property. That's different than Section 8. Now, HUD and Section 8 are not different anymore. It's the same thing. You pay 30% of your gross income, and that's what your rent is. It's not that way with a tax credit property. They have a different criteria to figure out what your rent is. Now, he told us yesterday that based on Terry's income, and my income does not count as an occupant. I'm not a lessee or leasee. I'm not on the lease. So my income doesn't count, which is actually a benefit. But based on Terry's income, his rent would be approximately $7.15 a month. Well, he kept conferring with who I think is the manager of the property where we met. It was not on the property that Terry would be living in. Now, let me see. What did he goof up with? Oh, first of all, after I told him that I would be a live-in aide, he said, well, I'm going to email you a lease to fill out. I didn't say anything. That was wrong. I don't have to fill out any lease. I have to sign one piece of paperwork that states that I am an occupant only. So that was thing number one. Number two, he said when he found out that I was going to be a live-in aide, I told him, of course, that we would need a 2-bedroom. And he said, well, we don't have very many 2-bedrooms. And families that have more than 3 people would have priority. Okay, y'all. No. Well, maybe. But in my 17 years of doing property management, and I did manage a couple of senior properties, I've never seen more than 2 seniors to an apartment. Now, there could have been a couple and a live-in aide. Now, the occupancy law is 2 people per bedroom and 1 in the living area. That's the law. So in a 1-bedroom, you are allowed to have 3 people. So I can understand if there were a couple and a live-in aide, or a couple even and a friend. I can understand that they would take precedence over 2 people. However, the way he stated it, he said a family with 3 or more. That tells me that he was confusing, really, the senior and the family properties. Okay, that was a little red flag right there. I did not question him on it. I didn't try to get clarification. At that point, with the 2 things that he had said to me about the lease and the families, I knew really that I was going to need to talk to the manager. So the other thing that he said, I told him, we both have emotional support animals. He said, well, as long as you have a letter from your doctor, you're allowed to have service animals. Okay, y'all, most of you know this, but for those of you who don't, there's a difference between a certified service animal and a companion and or emotional support animal. This video is going to run long, y'all, but I can't help it. I could cut it off and start again, but what's the point of that? Anyway, there's a difference. A service animal has gone through a certification training process, and they provide a specific service, such as an animal who is a guide dog for a blind person, a person who has PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. These animals go through rigorous training and they're certified. An emotional support animal is an animal that is needed by a person who has let's say chronic depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. These animals don't have to be trained necessarily. They can be, but they don't have to be. Now, it used to be that communities had to take both emotional support animals and service animals. Well, they changed the laws, and I don't know how long ago it was, because it's been many years since I've done property management. So, it's really at the property's discretion. Now, I'm willing to bet, because he did not stress to us when I told him that we had emotional support animals. I don't think he knows the difference, or he would have told us right then, right there, as I would have told an applicant. I'm sorry, we only accept service animals. Whether you have a letter from your doctor for an emotional support animal or not. So that's the other thing that I need to get cleared up. Now, Terry will not part with Mariah under any circumstances. He is not going to live without Mariah, and I won't live without Hazel either. So, everything is kind of up in the air. Now, for a live-in aid, I should have clarified, they don't do a credit report. And y'all know I applied for my own apartment and I got declined because of my credit. But a live-in aid does not get a credit report run. They do get a background check done. So there's a few things that I'm not clear on, and Jason was not clear on. So sometime this morning when Hazel and I take a little break, I'm going to get on Highway 8 first. We're headed that way. We're on the 15 South. Once we get on Highway 8, it is a straight shot all the way on Highway 8 to Yuma. So, I will let y'all know how this all shakes out, y'all. I'm going to have to call and I'm going to have to talk to the manager, which I have been able to do that in the past. A couple of times I called to get a little clarification on something. So I should be able to speak to her. And I will definitely let y'all know what's going on. And of course, Terry is nervous. He was so nervous in that interview yesterday, y'all, and it was really bothering him that Jason made him sign all the documents, and finally, which he has to do, y'all, no doubt about that. But Terry always depends on me to do his paperwork, and that includes putting the date. And a couple of times when I dated something for him, he made Terry initial it. So when you have a low income or tax credit, which is the same thing, they're very, very particular. They have to be. The paperwork is very strict. So if you have an audit, you could be in big trouble if you don't do everything perfectly. So anyway, y'all, I'll let you know what happens. And it'll be interesting to see. I kind of have the feeling that they are not going to allow Mariah. If they don't, then that means that Terry and I will be looking for a twin home or some other place to live that has a pro-pet policy. Now, where we're living now, they don't require your dog to be a service animal or an emotional support animal. As long as it's a pet and well behaved, they let them in. But this property, Mission Cove, has a no pet policy. Ooh, I'm just getting passed by California's finest highway patrol. So y'all, we'll see how all this works out, but he's really nervous about it. So as soon as I can take a little break and give them a phone call and clarify these points. Now, I don't think that I would live with Terry in a one-bedroom apartment. I think that would be a little too crowded, a little too close. I mean, I would not have really any privacy. And I just don't think I'm up for that, y'all. But I love you. And of course, as usual, when I'm on a trip, I make more videos. And I will upload this as soon as I can. Y'all remember to do something fun today. Bye now.